My name is Jacek Sietkowski. I'm the CEO of Tech to the Rescue. And to end up this beautiful day, I want to take you for a journey to how AI can solve social problems. So throughout the day, we have been talking a lot about how AI can be pushed forward when it comes to capabilities, how it could be used to make a profit in businesses. But I think there's one very special field that we need to think about a lot, and it's social impact. Why? Because there are so many social problems that we could solve with AI. But to do it well, it's very difficult to achieve, but only by technologists. So there's one special group of people I want to talk to you about who are essential to really solve those social problems, and I call them change makers. So let me tell you a story of Paul Radu. He's an investigative journalist from Romania. I call him change maker because 15 years ago, he started working in journalism, and he started working on investigative cases of crime worth of billions of dollars. And it's very difficult because when we speak about the crime of that size, it very quickly becomes international. There are many players, many countries involved, so you cannot really do this work alone. So he started a network of investigative journalists around the world. He managed to create a network of over 1,000 people. But still, to do this investigative work is very difficult. It takes months of research. So he had this idea that maybe someone could build a joint database of organized crime around the world and use AI to really help those researchers and investigative journalists do this work quicker. So he created an app which is called Aleph. It's open source. It operates for the last 2 years. And the app helps journalists do the work that used to take a couple of months, right now in hours. And through the app, they managed to recognize and publish history of crimes of over $10 billion. But Paul was lucky because Paul had an access to people who really can build AI for him. But it's not the case for most of the change makers. So change makers I define as people who spend a couple of years working on social problems, who perfectly understand how to solve them, but they need technology in order to scale up their operations. But 93% of them lack technology or lack resources or say that they miss technology talent to really push their work forward. And to solve this problem, there needs to be a movement of tech companies that want to help them and support their work to really drive the impact. And that movement already exists. It's called Tech to the Rescue. I am happy to run the movement. We managed to create a network of over 1,500 tech companies from 60 countries who joined us with a willingness to provide at least one pro bono project per year for a nonprofit. In the last 3 years, we managed to support over 700 nonprofits building technology, like technology that Paul is using for his investigative work. But the basic technology, like mobile solutions or software development, is very important, but we are in front of AI revolution. And AI is different, it's more difficult, and there are more unknowns right now. So we really need to give more effort to really help those people do the job. And I'm happy to announce today that Tech to the Rescue, together with the generous support of Google.org and AWS, launches a program which is called AI for Changemakers. So together, we join forces to create an ecosystem that will enable some of the world's greatest nonprofits to do social impact work. So together, we want to scout 100 greatest organizations in the world who are working in 5 different fields: education, crisis response, health, climate change, and economic growth. And we want to put them in place where it's at least as easy to build tech nonprofit as it is to build tech startup. So we are putting together the most comprehensive ecosystem for those organizations to really push the AI work forward. So within the program, they will have access to education, which is workshops led by companies like IDEO. They will have access to our network of pro bono companies that want to build software solutions for them free of charge or with heavily discounted prices. They will have access to AWS compute and infrastructure. We'll organize hackathons for them. We'll organize opportunities for them to pitch their ideas to world's greatest donors. So it is designed to be a place where you can grow, build solutions, and really make social impact work. I call it this ecosystem, and I call this movement because I believe that none of the companies or organizations would be able to do it themselves. And together with Google and AWS, we put together a group of wonderful companies that are joining us to really make this possible. And I want to invite all of you to join us as well. So the program starts today. We already have a couple of wonderful partners like IDEO, Global, Software One, or NetGuru, or Monday.com, but we need more. We need to create a place where it's easy to implement AI for social good. So any company is welcome to join our movement. You can take one of the free roles, so you can start building solutions and implementing the software you already have to solve social problems. You can also work with us to create infrastructure for organizations to really make this work easier. You can help us grow the ecosystem. This is very important, and without you, that won't be possible, and together we can really save lives of millions. So starting from today, we opened applications for nonprofits from disaster response and climate cohort, and we are open for working with tech companies to really make this work effective. So this is the end of the announcement. I'm happy to do it. It's a lot of months of our work. And right now I want to invite my wonderful panelists to actually talk about the whole social impact space and AI. We want to talk about why it's important, what is the opportunity, and how to make sure that this work will benefit many people globally. Wonderful people, can you join me? So these are the real people. Not all images actually match real faces, but I assure you that these are the real people, not AIs that we have in the picture.
That's AI gone rogue.
So we want to talk about AI and social impact work, AI and nonprofits. We believe that it's essential to implement AI in nonprofit organizations to really push the work forward. We want to talk about what is the opportunity, what are the challenges, and how the business can support. I have some of the greatest people working in the field in the whole world, so I'm happy for that. I have Alex Diaz, who is head of social impact at Google. I have Marnie Webb, who is chief community impact officer at TechSoup. I have Amy Guterman, who leads AI for good work at Salesforce. Maggie Carter, director of social impact at AWS, and Jackie Ugokwe, who is a community manager and works with wonderful community of changemakers at Gates Foundation. So we want to start today through talking about what can really happen if we do this work right. So starting from some real tangible examples of AI that was already used in nonprofits and works. So I want to ask some of you, starting from Alex, what type of work that Google has already done through its Google.org arm has been productive? What are the most exciting use cases of using AI for good that you've seen?
Thank you, Jacek, and it's such a pleasure to be on this panel with y'all. We are the closers, so I need y'all's energy to help us end the day on a great note. Yeah. So I'm Alex, as Jacek mentioned. I help lead our AI for Good grant making at Google.org. Google.org is Google's philanthropy. We've given over $200 million in cash in the last 5 years to nonprofits working at the intersection of AI and social impact. I will shine some light on some climate examples, and I know others will have examples from other domains. Listen, AI, when applied thoughtfully and to domains where it's useful and helpful, and we can get into that in this panel, can be a force multiplier. Our grantees report that they can achieve their primary outcomes in a third of the time and at half the cost, which really shows that efficiency dividend that AI can provide in a programmatic side. From the climate space, there's organizations like Climate Trace that use computer vision models built on satellite images that now they can track 99% of greenhouse gas emissions at the source. That's publicly available, open source, and an open platform. You have organizations like Rainforest Connection that use acoustic technology to monitor and stop illegal deforestation in rainforests, as well as monitoring biodiversity in those rainforests and trying to help conserve and preserve endangered species. And then you have teams at Google, like our Google research teams, that have been improving the state of flood forecasting as an example, both providing more lead time and more granularity to give folks additional time to get out of harm's way. But then that now, when encapsulated and handed off and then empowering nonprofits to give them more time to do the stuff in advance of disaster that really helps save and protect lives and livelihoods. So just a smattering of examples across mitigation and adaptation, but so much more that we can say here.
And Maggie, I know that you invest a lot in AWS in health equity. Yep. Can you provide some examples of using AI in this specific space, or anything that you think is super exciting that you've already seen?
Yeah, so
AI is the most transformative technology of our generation. And what we're seeing in the social impact space is AI, and more so Gen AI, has the power to really fuel, empower nonprofits and social enterprises in the great work that they're doing. So in health equity, which you mentioned, Jacek, we have a health equity initiative at AWS that we're funding. It's a 3-year commitment of $60 million where we're funding solution development to help advance efforts to address inequities in health globally. And one of my favorite use cases is a small startup that's Seattle-based. It's Huron AI, but the bulk of their work addresses health inequities in sub-Saharan Africa. So they have a solution, Gazika, that they've developed, and it's being used in Rwanda, where there's more than 13.5 million residents. And with that, there's only 15 oncologists. So they've developed a solution, leveraging Amazon Bedrock, to connect cancer patients in a more timely fashion with oncologists to get more acute and accurate care. So it's pretty powerful to see how AI has really transformed that experience for a cancer patient.
Yeah, wonderful example. I think especially in Africa, like we've seen some panels today talking about the huge need that is there that could be very, very useful. Amy, what about education? I know that you're personally a huge fan of using AI in education. Like, have Salesforce pushed some of the work here in this space?
Yeah, so we've done some work in education. We launched our first AI for Impact Accelerator last year, sort of right as ChatGPT was hitting its 1 million users mark. We recognized what a potential amplifier this work could be for those in the education and economic opportunity sector, specifically nonprofits working to achieve those goals. And so really, I think we at Salesforce are looking at the combination of what does AI plus data plus CRM look like, and how can an organization better connect with the constituents it serves through leveraging tools like AI to do, I think, 2 main things. So the first is augmenting their own human capacity, and the second is around building efficiencies as an organization who's often resource constrained and trying to, do everything they can to serve the populations that they're working with. And so there's 2 examples I'd love to share. The first is this amazing organization, Teacher Development Trust, and they develop training modules for teachers, largely in the UK, to help them understand how to manage classrooms. And what's surprising is it actually can be pretty lonely to be a teacher. You're isolated in your classroom, the only adult. You don't often have somebody observing or providing any kind of feedback to you in real time. And so they are working with us to create a chat-based AI simulation tool where they can start to engage in these classroom dynamics, and it's grounded with all of the best pedagogy and resources, and they've worked with our team of researchers to help develop protocols to test the prompts that they're running through and make sure that it's coming back sound and accurate, and then always keeping a human in the loop, so a coach that's reviewing. Another great example is just simply an organization who is trying to get a bunch of due dates for important information around like financial aid for students across 4,000 different college websites and tailor that to the individual. And so they're looking to use AI to scrape that data and then write short form content that can reach these, they serve specifically first generation students more effectively in their work. So really exciting ways in both sort of augmenting human potential, but then also streamlining their work.
Yeah, some wonderful examples. I think so many educational organizations could also leverage this work to enable their own interventions. I know that Gates Foundation is really invested into education. Bill is talking a lot about how education is going to be disrupted by generative AI. But I also know that it's not the only field that you are engaged. Jackie, can you tell us maybe a little bit how Gates Foundation thinks about the big AI for good bets? Like, what are the fields that may be potentially most impactful and interesting from the philanthropic perspective?
Yeah, thank you. Like my fellow panelists have mentioned, healthcare is a big one, education is a big one, but I think another sort of area that the foundation is focused on is actually agriculture. And one of my favorite use cases really is thinking about a company out in Tanzania where they're able to use basically generative AI and basically look at early detection of crop disease before it happens. And so you're talking about farmers out in rural areas where 50% of the cash in that area, or the cash flow, comes from crop, specifically maize. And so being able to utilize AI to look and say, okay, we can predict if this plant, is about to go diseased, or we can, mitigate against some of that using some of that technology. You're saving livelihoods when you're doing that. So I think agriculture is one of the big spaces that we're focusing on and investing in as well.
Great. My parents are farmers, so I think there are huge applications in Global South, but also like every other farmer could use this technology to really make sure that we can produce more food for people around the world. Marnie, you're part of TechSoup, which is one of the most amazing tech for good organizations in the world, being present in, I think, all of the countries, or almost all of the countries. You work with millions of nonprofits, helping them apply technology to their work. From your perspective, what could be the most transformative or interesting when it comes to the potential of AI in the social sector?
Yeah, I think a couple things that are the most interesting, like across the board for organizations, is the ability to use AI to identify specific communities that aren't thriving in the way that others are. So they can identify pockets of population, and with that, start to identify and target resources either at the hyper-local level, because just there's some reason that population isn't thriving, or to say, actually, this is an indicator of a systemic inequity. And so what do we do to go in and change the systemic part? But I think the ability, the AI, to pick that out of enormous data sets offers a lot of opportunity for small individual organizations, but also people that are working in the space and have resources that they can bring to bear as well.
That sounds very powerful. Okay, but we were speaking about organizations that are very progressive, and not the whole change-making space looks alike. So I'm curious how far we are from the wide adoption of AI and nonprofits. So let's talk a little bit about it. So my experience at Tech to the Rescue is that actually there are at least 4 different kinds of nonprofits. So first of all, there are innovators, so nonprofits who employ AI engineers who can really push the work forward, who are on the frontier of innovation. Then we have organizations who I call the nonprofit scale-ups, organizations that have already established some amount of operations. They could leverage AI technology to make big progress, but they may lack some of the resources, and maybe using some technology could help them to make big progress. Then we have established local organizations, so basically organizations present in one country that are doing their work and that potentially could use off-the-shelf solutions, and probably the local organizations who maybe don't even need AI to do their work well. But all of you work with nonprofits. I'm curious, what are your lessons about the biggest challenges, the biggest blockers that organizations see, how we might empower organizations to really make bigger progress? And maybe you could start here again from Alex.
Yeah, I mean, couple things come to mind. First, I think we need to be careful to not be AI solutionists. I think oftentimes the first question that we ask nonprofits is, what problem are you trying to solve? And then from that problem set orientation, try to figure out what are the set of solutions, technological or not. And if they are technological solutions, if AI can play a critical role, then great, we'll pursue that path. But that's key. We can't be trying to use an AI hammer in search of a nail. It really needs to be tailored to specific problems where it can be helpful. And there's certain underlying features of certain domains that make an area high potential for AI, very data-rich environment, et cetera. So that's one. Our team just launched a large survey where we surveyed a broad group, I think several thousand of folks that are in the Google for Nonprofits program, specifically on generative AI. And it's published, so anyone that's interested, please search it on your favorite search engine. And what we found was 4 out of 5 nonprofits would say, hey, there's something about this. I've read it, I've seen it, some demos. There's something here that is exciting. But over half of them quoted, I don't have the time, the awareness, the tooling, the funding to really make progress against this. So that's a call to all of us to meet these organizations where they are and provide the necessary training, the resources, the awareness and availability of these tools that can be off the shelf. And for those that are more technically savvy, you can customize. But there's a huge effort that we need to do to really make sure that we're bringing and lifting the tide of all boats. Because AI has a really, really powerful capability to be a great leveler, but that's not going to happen by chance. It's really going to take all of us to do that together.
Yeah. Jackie, I know that Gates Foundation in the last year, I think, made a 30 million investment into supporting huge amount of organizations into piloting AI use. What are the learnings from this process? Like, can you tell if we learn something from that experience and we can use that experience to inform the broader interventions on the market?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest learnings, and I think you were sort of somewhat alluding to it, is AI can absolutely be a great leveler, but it's really not that yet. One of the things we learned was that there are huge inequities when you're looking at even access to AI and AI solutions. So the $30 million fund you mentioned was actually provided for AI-based solutions in Africa, right, where there is sort of a bigger disparity between the global north and the global south in having access to AI-based solutions. And it's interesting because you would think 30 million is a lot, but it really isn't. When you're looking at, you're not only just trying to churn out quantities of solutions, what you're actually trying to do is seed and cultivate an environment that will create sustainability, right, over time. So you want solutions that can last. And what you have to do there is also build out infrastructure that will last. You have to engage with policymakers to create policy that will help grow and cultivate. So I think those are some of the learnings where it's not enough to just sort of give the funds and provide the funding. There are a lot of underlying factors that are challenges in various regions that don't allow or don't sort of create the best environment for AI solutions.
Yeah. Maggie, AWS works with both nonprofits and for-profits. Mm-hmm. And we talk a lot about how nonprofits need to evolve to be ready for AI, but potentially every other organization in the world could have, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious, like, what are your learnings? And do you think the nonprofit market is in a different place than the for-profit market is? Like, what are the differences and where are the gaps?
Well, you see trends, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, and it just depends on where a customer is and their technical maturity model. But with nonprofits, you tend to see there's less investment in technical expertise within in-house. And so, some of the gaps that you find are access to education and skilling and access to technical expertise. So that's why partnerships with other organizations and private sector, like those of us at the table here, are critically important because you can help teach them to fish, right? Through mentorship and through training programs that are offered. At Amazon, we launched last year an Amazon AI Ready program that provides training about AI. Up to 2 million individuals we are committed to training, just to better understand from a baseline, from a responsibility standpoint, the importance of AI and acting responsibly. And then we have training and certification programs as well about how to build and deploy sustainable solutions.
So we spoke a little bit about the funding, the readiness, the access to talent. Amy, I know that within the Salesforce Accelerator for nonprofits, I think they have them all, right? What is happening when they have them all?
Yeah, right, correct. In our AI for Impact Accelerator, we're providing product, unrestricted grant funding, and pro bono experts from Salesforce to surround these organizations and support them in both thinking strategically about their solutions, making sure that AI is the right fit for that problem that they're trying to solve, to your point earlier, all the way through to thinking about is their data clean enough? Is it organized enough? Do they have it stored in the right way to be able to access it? And those are really powerful sets of skills for organizations because, as others mentioned, a lot of organizations don't have that talent in-house. It's really expensive to hire AI talent, especially in today's market when all of your major corporations are vying for that same talent, frankly. And so to be able to provide that support to help grow the capacity within an organization so that, sure, even if this project that they're working on that they've proposed fails, they still leave learning something new. And so we see our role intentionally as being risk tolerant. We want to provide the room and the flexibility for these organizations to grow, to try something, to experiment that they otherwise may not have been able to do for lack of resources, lack of capacity, whatever the reason is. But I will say, I think the number one thing we've offered, and I've said this many times already, is the pro bono support. They come for the funding, they stay for the pro bono support. It's like very powerful what can happen when you partner all these different diverse perspectives together and skill sets that can unlock for the organization.
Pro bono support again and access to talent, but Marnie, that would be very difficult to provide pro bono services to 1 million organizations, right? So what are your learnings from the perspective of the ecosystem, right? Working with millions of nonprofits.
Yeah, I think that, what we think about, so most of the organizations that we help in a given year have a budget of under 1 million US, no matter what country they're in, US, Germany, Kenya, Brazil, and obviously in some countries that top number is much lower, right, than 1 million, but they're small relative to their economies of the country that they're in. Their budget relative to their local economy for technology is less than a high-end laptop annually. And so, when we think about their context, the tools and expertise are often out of cost for them. They can't afford that staff person. They can't afford the monthly user license. So we're thinking more and more, how do you put together collectives of organizations so that you can meet their needs as a group and not just as an individual organization, right? What does it look like when you start building geographically bound communities of purpose that can share and benefit from some of these models? But there's a lot of nonprofit funding that make that hard. They're often competitive with those other organizations that would be in their community of purpose.
Yeah, but it sounds like we all need to do more to create this ecosystem that can support those organizations because the potential award is huge, right? So let's talk about what is the role of business. We are at the Enterprise AI conference. Starting with Maggie this time, what are the specific things that AWS commits to do to make sure that social impact organizations can leverage AI for the best?
Yeah. What is the responsibility of business? I think that's what we're representing, the commitment that our companies have. But what AWS is doing specifically is we have many programs that nonprofits and social enterprises can tap into. One is our AWS Nonprofit Imagine Grant program, which is access to unrestricted cash grants, marketing support, and then pathways to technical support as well through our Gen AI Innovation Center, which recently launched. And that's where we teach a nonprofit to fish. So hands-on skills development where we have technical staff they're building a solution side by side with the nonprofit. So those are some of those that stand out. And then specific to health, we have our AWS Health Equity Initiative that really doubles down in addressing inequities in health through our technology, focusing primarily on sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America, where we see some of the greatest need.
Yeah, so education for most of the organizations, and then investing specifically with all the tools in some specific fields that are of the most interest.
That's right.
Amy, from your perspective and Accelerator, what do you think? What companies should do to really help the whole society leverage AI for the most?
Yeah, so the way I think about it, we're lucky at Salesforce to have had philanthropy baked into our model from the start. So we've always viewed business as a platform for change, and we were founded with something we call the 1-1-1 model, which is about giving back 1% of our time, 1% of our product, and 1% of our equity back to the social sector. And so that has led to 56,000 nonprofits and schools using our technology for free, either for free or for heavily discounted pricing, which is amazing. So I'm so glad that we were able to do that. And I think every company should find the way that feels like a good fit for them to what they can naturally build into their business that feels attainable. For AI specifically, I think there's a couple of areas that come to mind. So first, I think about trusted AI. We are thinking about, as a tech company, how do we build in responsibility and trust into the product? So we house a lot of organizations' data. We don't own that data. That is not our data. How can we be responsible stewards of that and help our customers, our both for-profit and nonprofit customers, feel confident in their experience with that? And so that's been a really big topic of conversation for us in how we're thinking about deploying the technology and advising the nonprofits that we work with on how they should be thinking about building their own governance models internally. And then another important perspective is thinking about us being an active listener, right? Like, we are hearing from our community, especially in the accelerator. You know, I heard this come up earlier in one of the talks, but the last thing anybody wants to do is do more harm, like especially nonprofits who are working with the most vulnerable populations. And so how can we listen to them, hear what they're saying, where their concerns are, and bring that back into the work that we're doing, especially as, you know, many people in this room are AI engineers and experts and technical experts. Like, how do we really listen to the communities who are going to be using this technology and make sure we're hearing their voices and perspectives and bringing them back into our work?
You mentioned access to data. I think we haven't really covered this, but all the research shows that nonprofits really struggle with the data, especially for the ML model training. And I know that Google is starting some of the investment in this field, which is pretty new. Alex, can you share more on that and how you think other tech companies could help the society to really leverage the data which is there, but not maybe easily available to nonprofits?
Yeah, and I'd love to build on what Amy was saying. I think, like, in terms of the business responsibility, like, Google also has committed the 1% pledge, and we think about bringing our best assets, which are our people, right? We have a program called the Google.org Fellowship, where we can second full teams of employees for up to 6 months full-time pro bono to build tools and products for nonprofit organizations, and then it's their IP, it's their product afterwards. And I think to your point, Yas, like, we try to take a holistic approach for our AI grant making, and that starts with data. So we brought with other peer funders like the McGovern Foundation and Rockefeller Foundation, we've co-founded this thing called the Lacuna Fund that is focused on funding locally led and managed data sets into existence on critical topics like climate and health and education, which we want to make sure to fill that representative and that fairness gap that exists in the ecosystem for some downstream models that can get built on top of them. But critically, I mean, just having access to data is insufficient. There's a team at Google that we work closely with called Data Commons that works to interoperate publicly available data sets so that you can now query across multiple data sets that might be in different formats, on different timelines, to really derive that insight, that novel insight that you're looking for that can really truncate the time from understanding data to insight to, most importantly, action. And then now with the advancements in large language models, you can smack a natural language front end, and you can literally just learn at the speed of your curiosity. I think trying to find ways to get this tool, so anyone that's out there, please look up Data Commons. We worked with the UN Statistics Department on a Data Commons for the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that can really help track and monitor progress against the SDGs. And then underpinning a lot of this, there's a huge need, to Amy's point, to really support the responsible AI ecosystem. So last November, we came together with other peer funders and other philanthropists to launch an inaugural AI safety fund to really start to make sure that organizations have the resources that they need to fund model evaluation cards and bias busting efforts into existence, because that is critical to ensure that not just we're putting these powerful tools out there, but that they're safe and trusted by design.
Thank you. Jackie, I know that Gates Foundation is perceived by many people as the world's largest philanthropic initiative, but I know that you collaborate with businesses as well, and that's happening for a reason. Can you share more, and from the perspective of such a philanthropist like Bill, why the role of companies is important?
Yeah, no, I think Alex just touched on it here when you're, thinking about sort of building out more, thinking about, the resources that need to go into it. Yes, the foundation is pretty big and gives pretty large sums of money out to, invest large sums of money into, funds for AI and other things. But you think about it, it's not enough, right? I think there absolutely has to be more. And this is why there has to be collaboration across businesses, other big foundations, smaller foundations, other top philanthropists, right? To collectively together continue to invest in products that, one, we need globally, right? Like whatever region or area you're working in, these are things that affect human beings and human lives. And so being able to fund that for just the greater development, I mean, how can you argue with that? And going to my sort of little SDG sort of spiel, usually you think about, SDG 17, right, which is collaboration and partnerships and achieving the goals. And I think one of the big ways that the foundation really truly does try to do this is through partnerships with other organizations, building out those, funds. We understand business is a major leader, right? Everything can't come from philanthropy alone. Business has a part to play because they make profits, right? And so, working with organizations like these, on the panel today is what will help us accelerate towards the progress we're looking for.
Yeah. Marnie, you bring the business contribution to nonprofits at scale. From this perspective, not only thinking about the big players like Google, AWS, or Salesforce, but from the perspective of the solution providers or another perspective, what do you think would be crucial for the business sector to offer to make sure that we can leverage the opportunity?
I would love a chance for the small civil society organizations that we work with to have two things. One, to have facilitated ways to aggregate their use cases and put them in front of these companies. So your pro bono effort is meeting the need of 1,000 organizations in 10 different countries, like that kind of work, and how do we do that and provide regular feedback. And then the second thing is to support these organizations, and maybe a lot of this is driven by more traditional philanthropy actually, but also philanthropy that comes from corporations, but to drive data aggregation in common format so it can be investigated in things like data commons, which you were mentioning, right? Because you're all data aggregators when you get information back from the organizations that you supported about your projects. And so how do we make that data available is another way we see our communities, the same way AI is looking at commerce data or health data or other metrics.
Thank you. So to summarize, the opportunity is big, right? We can win a lot, but the needs are also huge. There's a big gap. We are only starting. There's a room for everyone to contribute. So we welcome you to join our movement. All of us are fully invested in making sure that AI can benefit nonprofits and people as much as possible. You can join us. If you have ideas, if you have ways to contribute, please reach out to any of us, and let's do more good for everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, my dear panelists, and let's continue our work to make the world a better place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.